Hare Krishna. It's Krishnendu Das here, back again for the daily Facebook Live. And today we'll be doing a quick book summary of this book, The Purpose-Driven Church by Rick Warren. Just a reminder, in case you don't know who I am, I have a podcast called Successful Vaishnavas. I created a formula called the Mayapur Success Formula, which is for helping Hare Krishna devotees to achieve success. And I'm soon to launch a membership site called Empower and Preach, which is for helping devotees to connect together and get training on how to preach and develop Vaishnava community and be the best devotee you can be. So that's just a little bit about me. But today we're going to be talking about this book, The Purpose-Driven Church. The reason I thought I'd speak about it, you've probably heard me mention it in maybe every Facebook Live that I've done in the last month. I have to return this book to the library. I've renewed it a few times and it needs to be returned. So I thought before I return it tomorrow, let me just go through and summarize some of the ideas from this book and how it can be helpful for you if you're a preacher and just in general in Krishna consciousness. So first of all, obviously from the title, it's emphasizing the importance of purpose. Now, Srila Prabhupada has created 7 purposes of ISKCON, and I think it's important as a society that we refer back to those purposes often. So, without going into all of the 7 purposes that Srila Prabhupada has given, one of the key ideas that Prabhupada talks about is the importance of education, and let's move over a little bit. The importance of education, educating people in the principles of life and values, and using books and other media to propagate those principles. So Rick Warren has the same idea in his book, that the purpose is the most important thing. Because he's making the warning that a church could be based around the personality of the person that runs the church. In our case, we could say temple. And then it becomes a person-centered church. There's so many other, things that could be based around. It could just be based around, we just need to get money to maintain our deity worship or to maintain our programs. So in his book, he's emphasizing that God has purposes, and we should align our church or our temple with the purposes that God has given for us. So for us, Prabhupada's given the 7 purposes of ISKCON, and we should look back and see, is our temple aligned with the purposes that Prabhupada has given us? Is that the main objective, or have we become deviated in some way? So this is one of the key ideas that obviously comes out of the title. And he emphasizes the importance of working together to create a shared understanding about those purposes. Not that we just have something on the wall, or we just point to Prabhupada's book and say, these are our purposes. No, we have to really discuss them and understand them. How do these purposes, the 7 purposes of ISKCON, relate to our project? Be it a temple or a preaching center, or even a restaurant or a Krishna conscious business. We need to discuss and really internalize and make those purposes our own. So Rick Warren, when he talks about the purposes, I'll see if I can find that section. He basically talks about 4 purposes, and he puts them in a quite a simple way. If I can just find it. I'll see if I can find it as we go through. I can't find it off the top of my head. But the basic gist of it, I'll just say from my memory, is that 1, we need to develop our own spiritual strength. I forget what he calls it. Maturing. He calls it maturing. We also need to develop a community. That's another thing that he talks about. We need to reach out to others. That's mission. And community, I think he calls it ministry, and fellowship. So there's 4 different areas. I think one of them is strengthen the spiritual understanding, community or ministry, caring for the needs of the people in the church, as well as people in general. Reaching out to others and becoming strong ourselves in our own spiritual practice. So the details don't matter so much, but the gist of it is that there's different areas, and we need to be very clear in our activities about what we're trying to achieve. And we can see that the purposes of his church that he talks about are really the same principles that it would apply in a Krishna conscious community. Just a second. Which are caring for devotees, caring for ourselves, caring for the devotees, reaching out to others. So, this is the beginning part where he talks about the importance of having a purpose, communicating it really clearly so that everybody's on the same page, and so on. And then he starts to talk about how to put those purposes into action. Just before I get into that, I really like the introduction. He talks about surfing spiritual waves, which I'm sure any of the devotees out there that like surfing can relate to. And I thought the analogy was really, really great. And it's based upon the idea of not thinking that we're the doer, but rather we're the instrument. A danger is, when we, get a book like this, or we read a book on marketing of some sort, we can start to think that, I just have to apply this tactic, and that's going to be the solution for how people will become devotees. If I just stop wearing a dhoti, and instead I wear pants and a suit and tie, that's the secret. At the end of the day, the secret is Krishna's mercy. And we use our intelligence as far as possible, applying the principles that we find in books like this, just as a way of trying to be a good instrument for what Krishna desires. So it could be that, wearing clothes of the local people helps for the preaching. But really what matters more than that is the connection that the preacher has with the person, and the connection that the preacher has with Krishna. That's really the most important point. Again, in Vaishesika Prabhu's book that I've been mentioning lately, he talks about the 4 principles of book distribution, and one of them is the importance of having strong sadhana. Unless we're strong in our own spiritual life, we won't have potency. Prabhupada said that purity is the force, so it's something to keep in mind. So in this analogy of the surfing, the point is made that sometimes people think, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make waves. And so he's making the point in his book that you don't make waves. In the ocean, you cannot go and make waves. The ocean waves are there already. They're given by God. It's just up to us how we surf those waves. And I thought that was, really fair analogy. And I guess this would be an interesting time to just pause before we go into the structure of how Rick Warren recommends that we develop our churches and grow our churches. Is that this surfing the waves analogy, I actually found it in one of my notebooks from about 7 years ago. So let me just show you some of my notebooks. So I've been journaling on this topic here, or for at least the last 7 years. You can see I've gone through quite a lot of journals here. They have a few different titles. Attempts at mission statements, which I'll discuss in another Facebook Live. All kinds of notes about how to preach, how to be the most effective devotee that you can be, and so on. So for the last 7 years, I've just been filling up these books. They've all got different headings: life planning. Some of them just have dates on them. Hare Krishna School, okay. We've got some notes. Empower and Preach. Interesting. So I'm starting this membership site soon called Empower and Preach, and this is a notebook that I wrote probably 5 years ago. So it's not a new idea. It's just that now it's finally starting to come together. We've also got profit hacks. I once won a competition to go to Florida to learn about marketing, basically. And I flew for about 5 days, and I was in Florida for 2 days. They paid for my ticket, and it was, kind of a cool experience. And the interesting thing is, now that I look at this, is Rich Sheffrin, the guy who I went to visit there, the expert trainer, he's the one that recommended this, this book, The Purpose-Driven Church. I said I'm interested in developing a kind of like a movement within a movement. We've got this Hare Krishna movement, and I want to make a difference and inspire people to, to keep improving and improve our preaching and so on. And he said I should look at this book. So I've credit to Rich Sheffrin for that. We've got Experts Academy. It was from Experts Academy that I got a lot of my my ideas, and actually started the podcast inspired by that. So one-page productivity, Experts Academy bonus, and so on. So anyway, I've been looking at these books for creating these journals for years and years, and I was just looking through one of them from 2010, and this exact analogy that you can't create waves, but you can decide how to surf the waves. And I thought it was far out that the exact same idea had come through. So let's put those away. I'll save this one for a little bit later when we've discussed Rick Warren's formula and his kind of framework. I think you might find it quite interesting what I found in this notebook. This is my Maha Mantra and Bhakti Yoga notebook from 2010. So basically in 2010, it was shortly after I stopped being a teacher at the Hare Krishna school, and I had the idea of starting some sort of preaching program and applying the principles of marketing that I'd been learning. And so these are some of my drafts for the logo for this Maha Mantra sort of preaching program. That one, the darkest one in the corner, is the closest to what we ended up with. Dinabanu Prabhu digitized it, made a cool version. Here's a few of the other drafts, just for fun. With the temple, but at the end of the day, we came back to Lord Chaitanya in the shape of an M and New Zealand. So anyway, I'll discuss a little bit more about what that's got to do with what we're talking about today in a second. I think I probably lost the page. There we go. So Rick Warren is saying that first we have to understand what's the purpose of the church. And just to recap that one, it's about becoming strong ourselves, developing our community, and reaching out to others. So I'll just quickly flip through. I actually consumed this book mostly on Audible. I was listening to the book, so that's why I'm not that great at finding things in the book, because I heard it rather than reading it itself. So a little bit of history about this guy. His father was a pastor, and he wanted to be a pastor as well. And his decision was that, turn the lights up a bit. His decision was that I'm going to start a church by reaching out to new people. I'm not going to try to take people from other churches and sort of poach them, so to speak. He said his principle was to preach to the unchurched. Right, so that was part of his principle. He talks about in this book that some people think that if your church gets big, you must be compromising, and he says no, it's not the case, that there's some advantages to having a big church, and really it's not about the size that matters, it's about the health of the church, which is repeating a message which is also in another great book called The Advantage by a guy whose name I can never pronounce it. But the book's called The Advantage, and he's talking about the importance, if you have a healthy organization, you'll be able to achieve the purposes that you've set out to achieve. But if you're having all kinds of politics and internal conflict, then that's what will hold you back. I mean, it's the same thing that Srila Prabhupada said. He said that the enemy is not from outside, the enemy is from within, that it's only if we fight amongst ourselves that we can stop things from happening. It's not any external force that's going to get in the way of achieving this mission that he set for us. So another point that he makes in here is that there's not only one way to preach. Just like I was talking before, okay, we all have to start wearing pants, we have to throw away the dhotis because that's the reason why we're not preaching. And he was making the point that there's different audiences with different attraction to different things. So we have to try different ways. Okay, let's go out and preach in Western clothes. Let's go out in a dhoti. Let's try different types of food. Just try different things and see what works. Don't force others to do things exactly in a regimented way. As Srila Prabhupada said, if I remember right, the gist of it is that we shouldn't have stereotyped ideas about how to spread Krishna consciousness. That Lord Chaitanya has invited all the devotees to go and spread Krishna consciousness. And to do that, we can use our creativity and use our imagination to do it in a way which will inspire others. So this is just one of the points that he's making. There's not only one way to preach, and depending on the situation, you adapt. What actually reminded me to look into this book again was another audiobook I was listening to about habits. And I forget the connection to habits, but the point that he was making in that book is that Rick Warren, he adapted his church so that people would feel very comfortable in it. Which is very similar to the idea of Krishna West, of trying to make it so that when people come to the church, they feel at home. There's not so much foreign things going on. And so, this is one of the points that initially you want to make people feel very welcome and at home. All right, so then let's just talk about the basic ideas. I found the purposes. So for Saddleback Church, these were the purposes that they had. It was to magnify, which means to actually worship. Oops, did I leave that part out? Left out the Krishna part of it. So it's to actually worship Krishna. So in our case, that would be like deity worship and kirtan. Mission. So that's where we communicate God's word to others. We reach out to other people to help them become devotees. Membership. This is where people become part of the fellowship of Krishna consciousness. Maturity. We help people to develop their internal spiritual growth. And then ministry is where we develop our community and we care for the needs of the people in our society. So there we go. I'll just hold it up here so you can just see. I'm not sure how good the resolution will be, but if I go really close, just gives you a little taster of it. Okay, let's just quickly summarize the way that he organizes it, and perhaps I won't even there's a cool picture here too, so I'll just jump right into this part. So this Rick Warren, his preaching is based on the idea of gradually taking people from the broader community into the congregation and eventually becoming preachers again. So I thought this is a really awesome model. So it's starting by reaching out into the community, somehow or other attracting attention. And I think Hare Krishna community is good at that with our Harinams. We attract attention with our Food for Life programs and restaurants, book distribution. We've got the elements that help bring us into people's attention. And then the next stage is the crowd. So this is when people come to our temple or our preaching center and have their first experience. So this is like the Sunday feast. So we also have this Sunday feast program. So this element is there. Now where I think it's lacking in our society is the next elements is after people come to the Sunday feast, what's next? See, in the early days, it was quite simple. Someone gets a book, or they see the Harinam, they come to the Sunday feast, and they join. They give up everything, and they live in the temple, and become brahmacharis or brahmacharinis. That was the model, and even householders basically lived in the temple or nearby, and came to the whole morning program, and didn't have any other jobs, and so on. So it's not really the reality of how things are anymore, and I think there's a gap here. That once someone comes to the Sunday feast and they're like, what's the next step? We basically say, well, follow the 4 regulative principles, chant Hare Krishna, come back to the temple, and you're basically on your own. right? So I think this is an area where we need to really help people. And in Rick Warren's church, he actually has a membership class. So if someone comes to the Sunday feast and they want to become a devotee, or they're curious to know a little bit more, they have a special class that they hold in a weekend. I think they do it once a month. And within 3 or 4 hours, they go through the whole explanation about what it means to become a member of the church. And in his case, they say that, well, you need to come to the Sunday feast every week. You need to donate 10% of your income. It's a principle of tithing in Christianity. And then once you become a member, then the next level is to join a small group. So the people that do this membership class, they make that decision, okay, I'm going to join. And there's a celebration. It's a rite of passage. So it's like a mini initiation. It's not a huge commitment, but it's a step. And it's not even, to become a member doesn't mean that you're baptized, which is similar to initiation for us. It just means that you become a regular. Okay. So then, after becoming a regular and coming to the Sunday feast regularly, there's that small group training. So he mentions basically that the church, when it's got a big gathering, is like a big boat, and these small groups are the lifeboats. So the meaning behind that is that people will join often because of the excitement of a big gathering or a festival or something like that. But the thing that really makes people stay is the relationships that they have, the fellowship. As they say in business, that people join for the content, but they stay for the community. Which someone quoted me recently on Facebook, which is kind of cool. Not my quote. I'm not sure where it comes from originally. But the principle is really clear. In Krishna consciousness, people join because of the philosophy. But if we want them to stay and to be inspired, then we have to consciously develop the relationships as well as the understanding of Krishna consciousness. And that is done through these small groups. So then from that, the next level that they have is they have a training. So when someone comes to the next level, which is, I'll show you again this little model here. Community. Crowd means the Sunday feast. So community is just any outreach program like book distribution, Harinam, anything like that. Try to get it centered. Crowd means the Sunday feast. Congregation means they're coming regularly and they've become an official member of the church. So the next level is committed. So at the committed level, they are getting the training of the basic understanding, of the philosophy. Like the membership classes before joining, what to expect. And then this committed level is talking about understanding the philosophy and understanding the practices, the basic principles of how to live, for us as a devotee, for them as Christians. So that's the next level there. And then the final level is the committed is the core level. And this is where they take all the devotees who have joined this and have joined, they've become committed, they're following the small group, they've done the training on the understanding the philosophy, which of course is continuing on, because everyone always needs to keep developing the spiritual growth. But then they have another level. So basically, they have a few different key classes. So the next one that I'd like to highlight is one where it's helping people to identify their unique talents, their inspiration. What are they passionate about? What service could they devote themselves to? Right? And so this is what helps the members become missionaries. And again, from there, after identifying something that they can be really inspired by, some service, they can really absorb themselves in their service with their full energy and go out and help others. So for example, it can be on different principles. Like someone might be Chinese and they're the only Chinese person at the temple. So they might think, okay, well, I think that my mission is to go and spread Krishna consciousness to the Chinese community, right? Or if someone's a student, they might think, oh, well, I'm a student, so I'd like to go and preach to the students. And this is one of the points that Rick Warren makes as well, is that we shouldn't be worried about that we're attracting people like us. It's natural to attract similar types of people. He said that when he started the church, he was 23 or something like that, and he naturally attracted people in their 20s, like young professionals and business people and entrepreneurs, because they were very similar to him. This book that he's developed is based on marketing principles and the entrepreneurial thinking, and so naturally he attracted people of that same nature. When he wrote this book, he's already in his 40s, wow, like me, and therefore he was attracting different kind of people. Now he has his own children, I believe, and his life situation is different, so he's naturally can relate to people that are similar to himself, and he got other people, younger people, to preach to the people who are in their 20s and so on. So this is the basic formula. So we'll just go again with this basic circle. I can center myself around the camera. Okay. So we go out to the big wide world and somehow attract people and let them know about Krishna consciousness, through book distribution or some public program or whatever. And then they come to the temple, to the Sunday feast or a similar program specifically designed for new people, right? The Sunday feast is not for the regular devotees. The small groups and other festivals and so on is for the regulars, but the Sunday feast is what Rick Warren calls a seeker's service, specifically for new people. Then when they show interest, there's a membership class where they can learn what to expect from becoming a member. So those that choose to become a member, they come into the next inner circle and join the congregation. Now in the congregation, this is where there's another class, which is the basic philosophy and principles and lifestyle of a, in this case would be a Christian, but for us, in Krishna consciousness. And then they join small groups so they can develop fellowship and continue to develop their spiritual, to grow spiritually. Then they go in again and learn about their unique ability, something that they can, get this right, put their heart into. That was cheesy, but okay, no. So something that they can get inspired by, and then when they're inspired, they can again go out and share others using their inspiration and their creativity to bring new people in. So that's a quick summary there. And as I've mentioned before, one key point is that they don't artificially create projects. They develop people according to their strengths and inspiration, and then from there different ministries and different approaches develop. Like with the small groups, he says you can form them for any reason. The real objective is to develop relationships and closeness and fellowship. So it might even be a group of devotees that go for a bike ride together, and then they have a meal together or something. Like they get together and they play soccer. This is what this church was doing. This church in New Zealand, in Auckland, City Impact Church, I saw they had like 60 something different small groups. For example, expecting mothers group, mothers with babies group, mothers with toddlers group. You get that maybe. And it's also the businessman's breakfast. And I know that my father, when he was still alive, he went to some prayer breakfasts, and found it inspiring. So all different kinds of reasons. It could be, for example, I know in the past in New Zealand, Chitraleka Mataji and her mother, Goloka Prema, they were developing the new set for the deities, and the devotees were making it together. So everyone would get together, and in a small group, they would be, sewing and sticking and preparing the new set for the deities. And this was another type of a small group gathering. So it doesn't just have to be a place where we sit together and we discuss Bhagavad-gita, philosophical. It can be a little bit more social. But it's natural when devotees get together, they will discuss things related to Krishna. Well, we dropped out there for a second, but we are back. Hey. So I was just saying that the small groups where devotees get together can be for different reasons. It can be, more of a social reason, or it can be more spiritually based, and I think both are important. We need to understand the philosophy, and we also need to develop friendships. So anyway, I think I've pretty much summarized the purpose-driven church. We'll just do a real nutshell recap. 1, when we have a temple, we should see, is it aligned with the 7 purposes of ISKCON that Srila Prabhupada has given us? Number 2, develop a community where everybody understands those purposes and you have a common understanding about those things. Okay. Number 2, so the second part is to understand that people are at different stages, and our preaching is only really needing to get people to the next stage, closer to the center. So first of all, the big wide world, then we have something like a Sunday feast, which is for new people. Then when people become members, we provide small group opportunities to develop fellowship and to understand more about the philosophy. And then we help people to find out their uniqueness and their inspiration so they can do something that they're really inspired by. Here we go, I'll do that cheesy thing again. That they've put their heart into, so they can go out and preach to others. So just before I wrap up, I just wanted to show you, 7 years ago in 2010, I created this sort of flow chart, and it's exactly the same principle as what Rick Warren is talking about. The essential idea. So first we have promote. Okay. First we have. Okay, there we go. It's all back to the front for me. First we promote. We reach out into the world and get people to come and see us. Then we present. This is like at the Sunday feast. It's a presentation for new people, and we follow up people that come along, and then eventually we get that when they join, we help them to develop. We help them to develop their understanding of the spiritual life. And I think this section here about sustain is about the fellowship aspect, that we help people both with their material needs, but also very much developing friendships within the devotee community. And then finally, we help people to identify their unique contribution and how they can use it in Krishna's service and to help spread Krishna consciousness. And I don't know how this is quite going to work. You go up the page over here. It's all back to the front for me. Anyway, come back to the top over here and start the process again. So the idea is that we look to reach out to people. We convince them, or we help them to be curious, and then out of their curiosity we train them to be devotees, and then we train them to be preachers. That's the kind of idea. So it's very much in line with what the purpose-driven church has to say. And I've written this model down 7 years ago, and it's time, I feel, that I really want to share my understanding, because I wrote it down 7 years ago and I've been thinking about it continuously since then, how we can apply these kinds of principles of marketing and follow-up and cultivating people and developing community systematically to help our society. So this has been quite a long Facebook Live today, 33 minutes. So I hope you found it interesting. If you're watching the replay and you're short on time, I'll just give you a little hack that I do when I watch Facebook Lives. If you are watching the replay, you can click on just maybe up there or up there. I'm not quite sure which way it goes around. I think probably up there. It has the date. If you click on the date, then it will show the video again. And if you go up to the browser window and you change it from www.facebook.com, and instead of www you put M, then what you can do is you can actually, when you go to play the video, you'll see there's a download button just in the bottom. Like it could be just over here, or it could be over here. And that allows you to download the videos, and what I do, I put it on my phone and I listen to it at double speed. Saves a little time. I even put on my waterproof Bluetooth headphones and I listen to it in the shower. But hey, just a little tip on how you can hear good things without using up so much time. I mean, that's one of the reasons how I'm able to read so many books and do so many courses, is because I listen to them at high speed when I'm doing other things so it's taking advantage of my spare time. So enough on that. That was my book summary on the purpose-driven church, and just a little blast from the past of this this model which we were looking at before. We'll sign off now and wish you all the best in getting inspired to help spread Krishna consciousness and be the best devotee that you can be. So, this is Krishnendu Das, the founder of Successful Vaishnavas, the creator of the Mayapur Success Formula, and the soon-to-be-released Empower and Preach membership. Signing out, make your life successful. Hare Krishna.